Hello, everyone, and welcome to the PT on Ice Daily Show. My name is Christina Previtt. I am one of the lead faculty for the geriatric division of the ICE family. Hello. I am trying to rig up both Facebook Live and Instagram Live so you guys can tell me how I do. But if I look like I'm scanning an audience, it's because I have multiple pictures of my face looking back at me. I hope you guys are having a wonderful, wonderful start to your new year. And you're all getting started on your New Year's resolutions. We are about 5 days away from starting our next Modern Management of the Older Adult course, which is really exciting. We have a huge cohort starting, which has a lot of people coming from different backgrounds, which is really, really cool, because that's where we do a lot of our learning, right? I come from outpatient orthopedics. Dustin's in the home health area and sphere, and then we have people with acute care and hospital and SNFs and long-term care, and we had Switzerland and Australia and Canada all joining us, which is really cool. So if you guys are looking to join in, make sure you do that soon, because we are closing our doors to that course on Saturday. Okay, so I started thinking about some of these New Year's resolutions, and when we're thinking about New Year's resolutions, oftentimes we have something that is health related that becomes a goal. People can say yes or no about New Year's resolutions. Some people love them, some people hate them. I think that if anybody has a renewed sense of energy and motivation to be active, all the power to you. That's exactly what we want. And so I am always going to be encouraging anybody who is trying to be more active, whatever time of year it is. And if it happens to be New Year's, that's amazing. So a lot of people over Christmas time are getting Fitbits and they're tracking their steps and they're starting these challenges, which I think is really amazing. And we tend to have this 10,000 step type of goal in our mind. And being the clinician scientist, I started thinking about 10,000 steps and wondered, for my clients who are older, is this something that is a realistic goal? Is this something that is going to optimize their physical function, their physical health, especially if there's different comorbidities, different aches and pains, any chronic musculoskeletal stuff? Is this going to help or hinder? I was at a conference for the Canadian Physiotherapy Association, and one of the keynote speakers was talking about these milestones that tend to be indoctrinated into health, fitness, and rehab. She started talking about where the 3x10 prescription came from and where this 10,000 steps came from. And she had hinted at the fact that this 10,000 steps was actually a marketing campaign for an accelerometer, pedometer that was coming out into market. And it just tended to catch on because of the way that it was marketed to the public, which I thought was really, really interesting. And so being the big nerd that I am, I decided to hit the literature and see what it said about 10,000 steps. So what it started with the older adult literature, the Geri PT literature, is that individuals, as we get older, we tend to take less steps per day. So the average child will take 18 to 21,000 steps per day. And I would joke that their legs are smaller, so to get the same distance as the adults, they have to take more steps, but they're also way more active than we are. They have way more energy. If anybody has toddlers at home, you know that they are super, super active, and walking is not the speed that they know, and they want to run everywhere with this boundless amount of energy. And then as we get older and we get bogged down by stresses and life and all those type of things, and just wear and tear that's normally occurring, things that happen with age, we tend to slow down. We tend to become more sedentary. And we have a big problem with our older adult population that a significant portion of them are extremely sedentary and are walking less than 2,000 steps per day. And so trying to get our older adults from 2,000 steps to 10,000 steps may seem like this huge mountain. And in the ICE family, we talk about building the bike. Like, we want to build that confidence. We want to build that that relationship, that therapeutic alliance, those quick wins that are going to establish the relationship with our client. And so if we tell them that we have to go from 2,000 steps to 10,000, a 5 times increase, then we may actually be losing some of our clients. And so is that really necessary? So there was a review paper that was published, and I'm going to just copy and paste these links for the citations that I'm going to be using for today right into the comments before I forget, because I always do. So I'm going to copy and paste them. And what they talked about was, if we're thinking about exercise versus physical activity is any of our day-to-day movements, activities of daily living, independent activities of daily living that require us to go above a resting state, versus exercise that is purposeful. But the author was making the argument that if we are thinking that we want to accumulate 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise per day, and that is roughly about 30 minutes a day of moderate intensity exercise, then let's start using that as a starting stone for the amount of steps that we need to take. And so one of the things that they were talking about is, let's multiply cadence by the amount of time that we should be spending with aerobic exercise, because we know that people who hit that 150 minutes, but roughly that 30 minutes a day, have decreased all-cause mortality, better cardiovascular and physical function. And so they said an older adult in general, a healthy community-dwelling 65-plus-year-old, has a cadence per minute of about 100 steps. So if we take 100 steps and we times it by 30 minutes, we're looking at about a 3,000 step expenditure over that period of exercise. And so they were saying, well, 3,000 steps doesn't necessarily translate to 10,000 steps. So are we doing 7,000 additional steps outside of dedicated exercise in just our day-to-day interactions, depending on our age? And their argument was that we probably, for our older adults, that may not be the target that we need to hit. And so there's a lot of researchers in the US who are looking at individuals with knee arthritis. And so if anyone has treated anyone with very chronic osteoarthritis in the knee, or somebody who has gone through a joint replacement, we know that walking can be extremely painful. And if we're trying to get them to reach this 10,000 steps, then they may be in an extreme amount of pain at night. They probably aren't sleeping very well because they're overdoing it and overexerting during the day. And so what they did is they took a longitudinal study that had an accelerometer, pedometer component to this study. And they said, at what point do we start seeing a decline in risk? And they started stratifying these risk factors. And then they did an optimization, which is really nerdy and scientific. But the point is, they had the under 2,500, which was their control group, which is more of a sedentary group, saying that they were at a very low level of activity and should probably be boosting. And then they went 25 to 5,000, 5,000 to 7,499, 7,499 to 10,000, and 10,000 plus. And what they saw was, after in that 5,000 to 7,499 range, there was an optimization of improvement in physical function for individuals with knee arthritis. And this was also replicated in individuals with different physical disabilities. And so they were saying that probably the sweet spot is somewhere between 5,000 and 7,499 for individuals who are older and who have different health conditions going on. This may be a more realistic target, and individuals who are over this amount are less likely to have physical decline and physical disability 2 years down the road. So it was predictive of a decline in physical, or a reduction in decline of physical function, that double negative. So people were less likely to decline if they were in that zone. And so then they took these individuals and said, okay, well, where's the sweet spot? Where do we optimize how sensitive this measure was? And they said that it was probably around that 6,000 mark. So right kind of in the middle of that strata, we were saying, okay, maybe it's not a 10,000 marker, maybe it's a 6,000 marker. So let's try and get our individuals to 6,000. So if I have an individual that's at 3,000 and I'm trying to get them up to 6,000 instead of 10,000, I may be able to boost a little bit more of my therapeutic alliance, say, let's just start there. They saw that people who walked more than that had additional benefits, but it wasn't the same exponential increase that we were seeing as it kind of hit more of that plateau around 6,000. Some people argue that the 10,000 is even too little, and that individuals, for example, in Amish communities that have a very active lifestyle are in the 18 to 21,000 mark, including their older adults and middle-aged adults. But for some of my clients, that's just not a very realistic expectation for me to have for them, because if I try and get them to go at that increase in step count per day, then I might lose them, or they may be so flared up. Because a little caveat that I had with this, I had a client of mine with a hip replacement who was seeing me for physio. I had discharged her. I hadn't seen her in a while. And she would ambulate with a cane or a walker for long distances. But other than that, she was fairly independent. She was very strong. We transitioned her to working with a personal trainer. She was very active. She got a Fitbit for Christmas, and she had heard that the 10,000 steps was what she needed to accomplish in order to hit the required amount of activity for the day. And when she had started looking at her steps, just kind of seeing what her data trended like, it was that she was in that 3,000 to 4,000 step range. And she was in a one floor apartment. They had an elevator up and down, and that was what worked for her. And so she would go up and she would start to increase her activity. And so for 10 days, she was able to hit that 10,000 steps. So she marked her data. She had done this online and she had sent it in to me. And on day 11, all of a sudden, her body just revolted. She was just in so much pain. She had so much musculoskeletal pain in her hips and her knees bilaterally. And she was having pain in her replaced hip. And that really scared her, because she was saying, well, I haven't had pain there. Why am I experiencing pain when I'm increasing my level of activity? And this is supposed to be a good thing. But she 3 times her level of activity with no rest, no type of recovery strategies in place. And she probably overdid it. So we had to bring her down. I said, well, the initiative is really good, and I'm really glad that you did that. But let's kind of bring down our expectations a little bit. Let's try and go from 3 to 5 and see how we do. And so we ended up having to go through an orthopedic course of care. But after that, we had kind of brought down some of her expectations with walking, and then gradually increased her tolerance so that she wasn't having that flare up in musculoskeletal pain. And so something to consider, we kind of think about that 10,000 steps. And I know that sometimes with my busy PhD days, I'm spending a lot of time being sedentary, and I stress about the 10,000 steps, and I don't have any sort of neurological disability. I'm not experiencing Parkinson's, stroke, any sort of chronic degenerative condition like arthritis, osteoporosis, or anything else that may be leading to fatigue, rheumatological conditions that may act as a significant barrier for activity, and something that we need to consider when we're prescribing this type of prescription. And I would argue that physical therapists should be prescribing aerobic exercise. We tend to focus a lot on the resistance training paradigm. I have my own biases for sure if you followed me, but this is something that I need to get better at, and something that I thought, starting with let's kind of see where we can optimize physical function and reduce risk for decline down the road. Let's start there and then make those changes. So in conclusion, bottom line, for individuals with different physical and neurological disabilities, especially over the age of 65, that 6,000 steps per day tends to be a good sweet spot for optimizing physical function and decrease risk of decline in 2 years down the road. And so that's probably where I'm going to start with my clients, and obviously work on a gradual progression up to there. And then for some of my clients who do really well at 6,000, I can start boosting them up, and they're only going to get fitter, which is great, but not necessarily something that I have to expect right off the bat. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that PT on ICE and that you got a little bit of food for thought. If you guys have any questions or comments, I hope that you put them down below. I'm going to put those citations down right now so that I don't forget. And I will see you guys in a couple of weeks. Hopefully, I also see you on the ICE MMOA course. We also just put up a course for the end of June, June 22nd in Asheville, North Carolina. So if you guys are out that way, Justin and I are heading there in the summer. So have a great Wednesday, and we will talk to you soon. Bye, guys.